Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Yadivadadhari Gopi Jana Balabha Yadivadadhari Gopi Jana Yadivadadhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Brajajanara Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Nana Brajajanaran Jamuna Tira Vanam Chadi Natira Vanachan Yamuna Tira Vanachadi Natira Vanachan Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadadhari Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatara Satasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi. Well, if there are persons online or participating virtually, specifically, this is designed, that the topic is designed for newer persons. So if you're a newer person, get real comfortable. And I'm going to be speaking from a couple of verses, 2 verses from Bhagavad Gita. And to give it a title, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? You probably have asked that question or have been asked by others. I've been asked that question. in different ways. The wording is different, but the message is the same. Think of some situation that you know, either in your life or someone dear to you or someone even a little remote. Good person moving along the path of life, and suddenly, kaboom, calamity comes, something really bad. It can be any number of different things. And it leaves that person and those close to that person wondering, why did this happen? There's a section of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a section of Bhagavad Gita, it's also in Srimad Bhagavatam, where the puzzle pieces of spirit and matter and how they fit together is described. A very simple way of describing the message of Bhagavad Gita, it's spirit, matter, and the controller of both. Spirit and matter and the controller of both. Those are 3 of the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita. 2 additional ones are time and karma. Spirit, matter, the controller of both, time and matter, and karma. So just take those 3, spirit, matter, and the controller of both. That section of Bhagavad Gita is called Sankhya, Sankhya Yoga. And Sankhya, in very simple terms, is analyzing categories of matter, categories of spirit, indicating that we belong to the category of spirit, but because of implication with matter, we falsely identify with matter and become very involved in material activity, although it's not who we are, it's not where we belong. Those of you that are listening or viewing, Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 7, Text 27. If you're at your home, you have a Bhagavad Gita, you can look it up. Icha dvesha samutena dvandava mohena bharata. Icha means desire. And dvesha is, you could say its opposite, repulsion, attraction, repulsion, desire and hate. Dvandava mohena, overcome by these dvandava, duality of desire and hate, living entities take birth in this material world. And that desire and hate, original seed of desire and hate, is centered on the controller of both matter and spirit. According to the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, all living entities, ourselves included, and not just human living entities, but all living entities, anything that's alive, microbial germ in a big elephant, anything that's alive, a tree, a bird, etc. Anything that's alive, there's the spark of life, or there's a soul within. And that spark of life or soul that's within has no place in this material world. It's a foreign situation for us. We don't belong here. But we're trying to make ourselves belong here. And we come into contact with this place that we don't belong because of these 2 reasons. Icha dvesha samutena dvandava mohena bharata. Overcome by this duality. So here we are. A spark of life, spirit, soul, very involved in the material energy and the nature of the material energy, if, as long as, this is a causal statement, as long as we're interested in trying to be the enjoyers of this material nature, we're implicated in the laws of karma within the material nature. Whether it's good or bad conduct or involvement, that which is compassionate and elevating and beneficial from a material point of view, or detrimental, harmful, destructive, bad from a material point of view, both good and bad, they have their consequent reaction. That's karma. Action and its consequent reaction. So now if you have, those of you that are home and you have access to Bhagavad Gita, you can look at Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, text 22. 13:22. Some of you in your room, you have your little handheld device. You can look in your handheld device and find Bhagavad Gita 13:22. And let's see what Krishna says there. That is also a Sankhya section. As so, it's the categories of matter, categories of spirit. We belong to the category of a spirit, and both are subservient to the source of both. So 13:22. Purushak prakriti stohi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan. Prakriti means material nature. So, bhunkte prakriti jan gunan. Prakriti jan means produced by material nature. The material nature has modes, fortunately or unfortunately. The material nature is conducted by 3 modes. That's another big topic in one of the main topics of Bhagavad Gita, the modes of nature. And according to the way that one associates with Prakriti, Bhunkte carries the meaning of trying to be the enjoyer of. Bhunkte Prakriti. When the soul tries to be the enjoyer, Bhunkte, of material nature, according to the modes, guna, of that material nature, we become implicated. We are the living entity. That Sanskrit phrase Purusha literally means the enjoyer, and it most appropriately applies to the Supreme Lord. It's His energy, material energy, spiritual energy, all energy. It's His energy. He's the energetic, and He's the enjoyer of His energy. However, some living entities, namely us, want to be the enjoyers of Krishna's property, Krishna's energy. Bhunkte Prakriti. And so the so-called Purusha Prakriti sto hi. Sta means to be situated in. So we're the living entities situated in Prakriti, material nature, striving to become the enjoyers of Prakriti according to our nature, our modes of nature that we're involved in. And then the second half of the verse gives the clue to why bad things happen. Karnanam gunasangosya sad asad yoni janmasu. Karnanam, means it's a term that applies to causation. There's cause and effect in this material world. So the cause is living entities trying to enjoy Prakriti. The effect is sad asad yoni janmasu. We're the architects of our own good fortune, ill fortune. We can't blame Prakriti. We can't blame Krishna. We actually we're the owners. We're responsible for our actions, good or bad. And according to those good or bad actions, good or bad meaning that which serves to elevate and that which serves to degrade consciousness. That which is beneficial for others, that which is detrimental to others. That which is beneficial for our state of consciousness, that which degrades our state of consciousness. Sad asad yoni. Yoni is a term that means a place of birth. Good fortune, ill fortune arises from contact with material nature according to the modes of nature. Good fortune, ill fortune are created. We're the architects of our destiny. This question of karma, I'm pausing because sometimes there's a misunderstanding. Not too often, but sometimes. Karma means everything's predetermined. It's called determinism. Some people misunderstand that karma is determinism. It's an ideology that says you really have no choices. Everything's going to happen anyway because it's predestined to happen, and you're just going along for the ride. Destiny rules, free will is out the window, and everything's going to happen because it's destined to happen. It gets a little more involved than that. We are the architects of the good fortune or ill fortune that come our way based upon previous free will choices. We chose something in the mode of goodness. Here comes a mode of goodness result. We chose something in the mode of ignorance. Here comes a mode of ignorance result. Here's something in the mode of passion. Here comes a mode of passion result. We are the architects of the good fortune, ill fortune that comes our way. So we're walking along the path of life, hoping for the best, but knowing reality has taught us it's not always going to be the best, and some unexpected misfortune may come our way. Sometimes even we're in anxiety about what misfortune might come. We had some time the other evening with some college students on the topic of anxiety because it's a big topic in the time of uncertainty with COVID and all kinds of other factors that are quite uncertain. People's occupation, people's education, people's income, etc. It's a time of great uncertainty, and that's uncomfortable, and it's the cause of anxiety for a lot of people. But now let's go back to, although there's uncertainty, we're going along the path of life today, and some misfortune, take it even stronger, some calamity comes before us. At least some danger, some great difficulty, some major obstacle that we weren't expecting. And here we are. This is the bad things happen to good people. You're the good person, or somebody you know is a really good person, and some misfortune comes. So, according to Sankhya philosophy, it's material nature that's providing this or that, the good fortune, ill fortune circumstance. Whatever the circumstance is provided by material nature, and material nature is acting according to the laws of karma. So, in this lifetime, perhaps I'm largely, or someone you know is very substantially in the mode of goodness kind of a person, and some misfortune comes. So, why did bad things happen? Because they're a good person. We can understand from Bhagavad Gita that that misfortune that came has something to do with past free will choices. And so the seed of that misfortune was sown sometime previously, this life or previous lives, not even necessarily the last life, because the time factor doesn't move karma always instantly. It can span over a long period of time, but the seed of misfortune has already been sown, and the seeds of good fortune have already been sown, and they're fructifying according to the movements of time. So the freedom that is not lost is the freedom to choose how you're going to respond. So this is now the topic of free will and karma. Is everything predestined and it's just going to happen, and you can go to sleep because it's going to happen? You really don't have anything to say about it. You don't have anything to say about what comes your way, but you do have everything to say about how you respond. Now, the tendency to respond comes from also past involvement with material nature. Karma is a complex topic, so I hope I'm not losing our newer people in the audience, but our past involvement with material nature produces tendencies. There's a nice Sanskrit word for that one too. Vasanas. Vasanas. Tendencies. Something like the roots of a tree. You can cut branches and limbs and things, but if the roots are healthy, then the branches and limbs may grow back. It may take a while, but welcome. Any place that you like to sit is fine. You're okay, wherever they want to sit. So because I selected a topic that was meant for people, guests that are not so familiar with Bhagavad Gita, so I selected a topic that's kind of covering many of the bases of Bhagavad Gita's message. So we've been speaking about why bad things happen to good people, and the relationship between free will and destiny. If things are destined, well, we're just now speaking about if things, some people have the idea, oh, you people that believe in karma, you're these deterministic people, you think everything's already going to happen, so really you don't have any role to play, it's just going to happen because there's destiny. So I was just explaining there's two things. What comes your way, that's karma, and how you respond, that's guna. Guna means modes of nature. And our tendency to respond, let's say somebody has a tendency to become angry, or someone has a tendency to withdraw, or someone has a tendency to become bewildered, or someone has a tendency to feel shame. whatever that tendency thing is, it's a modes of nature thing, and it builds up over time. It's not like it doesn't come quickly and doesn't change quickly. Tendencies are tendencies. So I was comparing that to the roots of a tree. Vasana. So vasana is connected. It's not karmically determined. Like, let's say somebody has a tendency to become angry. That's not karmically determined. Things that prompt their anger, that's karmically determined. But how you respond to that prompt, that's modes of nature related. Some persons are just very calm and they're tolerant, and etc. There's so many different responses to triggers to make some people angry. But how you respond, that's a tendency based upon the modes of nature. And you can choose. Even if when somebody has a tendency to become angry, I know somebody that has that, like run around all the time smashing things, but when they get triggered for anger, they lose it. They just lose it. And they don't even know that they're losing it until later as their family members have to tell them, excuse me, but you lost it again. And, no, I didn't lose it. Anyway, they can't, when one is captured by the modes of nature, one may not even recognize it. Even if someone near to you and dear to you tells you, you can't necessarily recognize it. The modes of nature are very strong. They're like waves in the ocean. And they just move living entities this way, that way, the modes of nature. So karma is what comes your way, and modes of nature is how you respond to what comes your way. And behind both of them is the soul. Because karma and modes of nature, they're both prakriti, material nature. And we're not material nature. We're the spirit soul. The capacity to make choices rests with the conscious living entity within. That's good news, isn't it? We're conditioned by material nature. We're conditioned by material nature, going back to what we said at the very beginning, 7:27 Bhagavad Gita. We come in contact. We don't even belong here. We come in contact with material nature because of desire and hate towards the source of everything, towards the Supreme. That's not very complimentary about our nature, but there's lots of us in that condition. I guess some good news is there are far more living entities that are eternally liberated. They don't have that tendency for desire and hate towards the Supreme. But those of us that are here, this body is like a flag that's telling the world, I've got that tendency to have desire and hate towards the Supreme. That's why I'm here. And once here, it's hard to extract oneself. So the whole of Bhagavad Gita is a lesson. It's not just a moksha lesson, how to become extracted from material involvement, but it's a restoring of our original consciousness doctrine, self-realization, to discover who we really are. There's some obstacles standing in the way, and that's our attachment to the temporary. Specifically, attachment to be the enjoyer, this iccha problem. We have iccha means desire. Iccha, strong desire to be the enjoyer of prakriti. Very strong. Very strong. Wanting to be happy is not a problem. Wanting to be the enjoyer of that which is not our property, that's a problem. That's a thief. And we have that mentality because it's somebody else's property. We enter the world owning nothing, we leave owning nothing, and in between it's so many things are objects for us to enjoy. That's the mentality. That's the covering. of the soul. It's foreign to us. It's unhealthy. It's unwholesome. It's our problem. It's our disease. So remedy for the disease is restoring consciousness of who we really are and how we fit into the big picture of material nature and the controller and enjoyer of material nature. Yoga, one way to describe what Bhagavad Gita is, it's a teaching that explains through different yoga systems how to restore that connection, how to regain that original consciousness, how to overcome the coverings, this binding force of material nature that conditions us, getting relief from that binding force of conditioning and becoming restored to original consciousness and consciousness of the Supreme. That's what Bhagavad Gita is. It's a treatise on making that connection again, or yoga. So to be successful in yoga, very pleasant sound. Nice ring. Compliments. There's stages, like from where I'm seated. There's the stairs that goes upstairs. We're on the ground floor, and set of stairs go to the next floor up. So the yoga system is compared to steps leading to higher states of consciousness, or leading to self-realization, or leading to restoring of our original consciousness. So the different yoga systems elevate, but part of that elevation is to understand how it is that we're entangled. What's holding us? What are the obstacles to get to that self-realization place, the higher consciousness place, the stage where we're healthy and not in a diseased condition? So the different steps of the yoga ladder lead to the top step of the yoga ladder or yoga system, and that top step is bhakti, according to Bhagavad Gita chapter 6. The topmost form of yoga is bhakti yoga, and bhakti yoga is very simple. It's two things: what you do with your body and what you do with your mind. Very simple. And the driver behind that is the soul. It's the desire, the hankering, the yearning of the soul to reach self-realization, to restore understanding who we really are. So what you do with your mind is bring your mind to Krishna. And what you do with your body is use your body in service to Krishna. And that's yoga. It's really in simple terms. Mind, madgatain antaratmana, the mind absorbed in the Supreme, and shraddhavan, with faith, bhajate, you use our senses in active ways in the service of the master of the senses. We cook for Krishna, go to school and study for Krishna, we go to the office and work for Krishna, we drive our car here and there to get to do things for Krishna. And we live our lives as if it's like everybody else living their lives, but the consciousness, the cultivation of consciousness is to do each of those things as an offering of service to Krishna. And slowly, slowly, by that elevation of consciousness, we can start to better understand these earlier things that I described, the Sankhya system. There's matter, there's spirit, and how do the two things fit together? How do they interact? How are they working under the influence of the modes of nature? How is the law of karma working? How are we implicated in the choices that we make, good or bad. The whole picture starts to become clearer as consciousness becomes more connected to Krishna, and thus the illusion, the illusory conception, misconception, the diseased conception of what happiness is changes. It fades, and there's another sense of happiness. It's a happiness that's within through a life of loving service. Life goes on. Externally may look quite the same. Here we are in a house, like so many houses in the neighborhood and all over the place. And so there's all the things. There's a car, and there's a kitchen, and I'm sure there's computers. Everyone's got your cell phone. You know, life externally looks quite the same. There's children, there's job, and there's stuff. But the consciousness behind stuff becomes different. So we involve ourselves with Prakriti, or material nature, with a different purpose, a different consciousness that's meant to be engaged in Krishna's service. The binding forces are there, so I'm vigilant. I know that I'm the architect of my own good fortune, ill fortune. That it's not just I want good fortune and want less of the ill fortune. The message of Bhagavad Gita is to go beyond both, go to the karma-free situation, not just good karma as opposed to bad, but the karma-free situation, live one's life in the karma-free situation, consistently doing like that. It exhausts the good and the bad karma and brings one to the karma-free life. In going forward in time, the trajectory of the soul moves towards connection with the Supreme eternally. That's Bhagavad Gita's message in simple terms. So back to the initial question, why do bad things happen to good people? If something bad happens to a good person, it means somewhere back there, some bad activity was done, and that bad activity is now fructifying in terms of some misfortune. We take responsibility for our choices, and something unfortunate comes. We may not know what that activity was in the past that caused the misfortune, but we can know for sure there's some activity that is causing this. And there's one exception, a category of exception. The category of exception is when you live your life in devotion to Krishna, not necessarily because of some wrong activity or bad activity, some discomfort or some obstacle arises, but it can be Krishna's special mercy where he's uprooting our very tendency to be involved in an enjoying way with matter, our fruitive tendencies and ignorance. This is Brahma Samhita's teaching. But in general, when misfortune comes, we're just receiving a token in those in living in the life of devotion. It's only a token of what would have otherwise happened if devotion wasn't there. The karma force would be acting full for those who are not engaged in bhakti. And those that are engaged in bhakti, it's greatly minimized, and the intention is different. The intention is to help us become uprooted from the very tendency of fruitive activities and being engaged in ignorant ways. It's meant for that purpose. So, our little discussion for this evening. And I have no idea if there are people online watching. Some others were also going to be coming this evening, but they weren't able to make it. So if those of you that are watching, if you're were going to be at 10 but you couldn't, you're free to send some questions into the chat box here. So anybody here in the room, first of all, who would like to raise a question?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
From your class now, you said being happy is not wrong, but trying to be the enjoyer is the problem. So I was just thinking my definition of happiness right now is in the category of probably, I'm not distinguishing between
Happiness and enjoying.
yes, Maharaj.
So you want the clarification on that?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. There is spiritual happiness and there's material happiness. The spiritual happiness is not based by definition, it's by negative definition. It's not based upon senses contacting sense objects and the buzz goes, wow, I like it. It's not based on that. Let's say it the other way. Material happiness is based on that. I want something, I get that something, I'm interacting with that something, woo, 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 woo. That's happiness. And I don't get it and oh, I'm sad. Or I get it and lose it and then I'm sad. That's, the duality of material happiness, distress. The enjoyment tendency is of the soul. Ananda, Satchit Ananda, that's the soul. So the tendency to enjoy for the soul in its not diseased state, but healthy state, is the happiness of love and service, connected with the Supreme Soul and other souls connected with the Supreme Soul, because it's all souls. So being in service to others on the spiritual platform of consciousness, as I'm speaking, I'm thinking of somebody in India that just wrote to me, and they have a large family, and the COVID thing hit when their two sisters who have small children were visiting, so they couldn't go back home. So they were in their home for 2 or 3 months and serving their sisters and the little children, and they were busy. But the happiness was not just being with family members, because one of the situations they had the opportunity to see is because their family members are not involved in bhakti like they are, they have habits and ways of doing things and language and so forth that's like troublesome for themselves, and they don't even see it. So they were appreciating the value they've gotten from bhakti, but they're also appreciating I have this opportunity to serve in so many ways, and then extend little messages of Krishna teachings to them. So when they left after a couple of months, they had done a nice service for their family members, practically helping them with their children and practically being there for them as they needed, and giving Krishna's teachings to them, little, not too much. So it was really happy. Now they're gone. So the situation has changed. But the happiness is there having done that service and now looking for restoring that same mood of service in multiple other ways. That's happiness. That's enjoyment on the spiritual plane, being connected to Krishna and enjoying serving Krishna in so many ways, including his part and parcel living entities, whether they're family members or not. And material happiness is the other. sense pleasure, displeasure, because it's duality, attraction, repulsion of the objects of the senses, material happiness, distress. Okay.
Can I ask another
Yeah.
question?
So we're pleasure seeking. Just back, back to what I meant to say. We're pleasure seeking beings. It's quite natural. It's not that we're not Buddhists. We're supposed to anesthetize being who we are and just become a stone and have no joy, have no feelings, have no desires, have no, none of that. So that's not what our teaching is. It's natural to want to be happy and to find that happiness in ways that's wholesome and of the soul happiness. That's natural. That's good. Okay. Now the other question.
Maharaj, with the current pandemic that's happening,
Yeah.
is that the collective karma thing, or like I was in the morning class and you were also explaining about the obstacles given by the demigods. So a little bit of explanation.
It's karma related for sure. Collective karma related for sure. And the demigods may have some hand in the collective karma of people. Let's say, storm or disease or something, earthquake. It's demigod related, bringing collective karma. Okay. Your daughter has something.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So like you mentioned, sometimes we like go crazy and we don't recognize it even if like someone dear to us tells us that. How do we like recognize?
How do we do what?
How do we recognize if we're going crazy or I don't remember exactly how you said
I
it.
didn't say crazy, but you're heading for let's say put it in an unwholesome direction or something that's detrimental to ourselves and others, and we have our blind spots, and we don't see it even if somebody says, "Look out, you got a blind spot." So, your question is, how do we get free from that blind spot tendency? That's your question?
Yeah.
Well, the starting point is two things. Recognizing that there are such things in us as there are in others. We may be in proximity to others that have their blind spots, which we can see, but we can see that they don't see. And even if somebody tells them, they can't see. So we know what a blind spot is. We know it exists, and we have them too. And then, so recognizing that we have them is a starting point, and wanting to get on the other side of them is the next starting point. So both of those. And then then comes good association. Now, is our heart open or closed to good association? Is there a willingness? Where there are trustworthy persons, to hear from trustworthy persons with our heart that's open. Because if we're in a blind spot, we're not going to see it ourselves. We need somebody that has their eyes open and can see, and they're not malicious, they're not whatever. They're well-wishers and wise, and they can see, and if we open, they may not come and tap us on the shoulder unless we go and ask them. That's what the willingness. I want to know where are areas that I can improve, and then that same person can supply some support. Now, the support doesn't mean they go and fix the problem, but it means they give support. Like, different kinds of support. Hold themselves accountable to that person, or hear from them, what do you think are some steps I could take because it's a blind spot and I don't recognize that I'm even involved in this. So what are some steps that I can take? And then be accountable, okay, I like those steps, that resonates with me. Can I report to you how I'm doing? Can you honestly report back to me, I'm still heading for the ditch? I know somebody that works in a hospital, and they have a blind spot. They just relayed it came up again in the workplace, and I'm really embarrassed. What should I do? So I'm not with them in the workplace, that I can be of support to what they have understood. I didn't, because I'm not in the workplace with them, so I don't know the dynamic and how things flowed. But they do. They're self-honest and they see it. So I can serve as a support. They can contact me whenever they want to contact me, and I can help support them to get on the other side and give some suggestions of, you might want to consider this, you might want to consider that. Next time it comes, here's something you can do to not, fall into that blind spot trap. Try it out, see what happens. So find somebody that's this after these first two, find somebody that you is trustworthy and you trust, and you seek their guidance, how to overcome. What are the blind spots, how to overcome, and you work on it. And it takes time. So be patient with yourself. Don't go the other direction. Oh, I'm bad. What's the use? Because I'm bad and I can't overcome my badness. I can't overcome my shortcomings. With spiritual potency, darkness is dispelled. It's like light that dispels darkness. So just move towards light and the darkness will go. And with that faith, then that's what you do. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else in the room would like to discuss something? Yes?
Maharaj, you said that so our past reactions to our past actions brings in circumstances in life, or
Say it again, please. I missed it.
The things that come in our way in our life is due to our past
Karma.
karma, and how we respond is according to the modes of nature.
Yes.
So
modes of nature are influencing our free will. It's possible, it's certainly possible, to not be dictated to by our modes of nature. It's free will, largely influenced by guna. The tendencies from the past free will choices make guna.
That was my question. So if I am being influenced by the modes of nature, where is my free will?
So supposing I have an anger problem. I know some people that have an anger problem. That's a mode of nature thing. Something happens out there, they get triggered and they get angry. That's a mode of nature response. They have freedom to not choose anger. They have freedom to choose some other mode. It's not easy, but it's a free will principle.
That's acting beyond the modes of nature.
That's right. Now, it can be, and let me select another mode of nature from the menu. Let me select the mode of goodness one instead of the mode of ignorance one. And then it's not going beyond, it's just making a different selection. It can be that anger is pushing me, but I'm not going to yield to that mode of ignorance mode. I'm going to go to the mode of goodness one. I'm going to be forgiving. And then it slips again. So transcendence is transcendent, is beyond. That's a free will choice also. But transcendence is dependent upon receiving mercy or making that connection, the mercy connection with the Supreme. I can be an atheist and move towards a different mode of nature. My free will is happening. Trees and birds and fish and dogs have free will. They have modes of nature. Some dogs bark a lot. Some dogs are, they'll just wag their tail. There's different modes of nature for everything, for trees and birds and plants. Some have nice flowers and some have poison plants, poison ivy. It's a mode of nature. So modes of nature acting. In the human form of life, we have the capacity to make other choices. You can train a dog to not bark, but the barking dog will still bark. Anyway, you can train, but the human form of life with higher consciousness, we can choose divinity. We can choose transcendence. But to choose transcendence, we need mercy. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
When troubling situations come, how to keep the focus on practicing bhakti?
By practicing bhakti. By practice. That's how. By effort and mercy, that's how. We continue to practice and we're depending upon Krishna's mercy, and together you get to stay in that position. And otherwise, you're going to move from that position based upon guna and karma. Okay. Online?
Mm-hmm. So this is by Atulya Mataji. She says, is it okay to understand that people who hurt or trouble us are instruments of our karma? And how do we understand the free will of the people that hurt us?
For you, Atulya, you're a devotee. It's not cent% instruments of your karma, although what you can think like that. That is to say, living entities that are not involved in the spiritual potency, they're not involved in connecting with Krishna potency. It's full on, they're the instruments of your past karma. And for you, because you're involved in a life of devotion to Krishna, it's but a token of past karma. It's but a mild reminder of past misdeeds and past free will choices. So you can see the instruments of hurtful dealings coming into your life as being like that, a minimization, a very mild minimization, just as a reminder, and to help of your past, and to help detach you from fruitive tendencies, period. Now, the mindset of the other person, they're not thinking I'm the instrument of Atulya's bad karma in the past, so here I go and I'm going to do some hurtful thing. They're not thinking like that. They're involved in their own biography, autobiography, their own good and bad and mix, and living through all those things. Okay?
Ratnavali Mataji from Atlanta, Georgia. She says, sometimes I feel aversion towards strangers just by looking at them for no reason at all. I feel guilty about this thought, and is that feeling because of past karma? And if so, how do I correct myself so that thought doesn't cross my mind in the first place?
Well, it's not your karma. It's identification with the body as the self, your identification with body as the self. So how to go beyond the bodily identification of thinking I am the body. And that's the whole of Bhagavad Gita's message. It's a beginning stage of Bhagavad Gita's message, going beyond that bodily conception of I am the body. So it's awakening the spiritual conception. The bhakti process is meant for that. Read Bhagavad Gita carefully, follow the bhakti process carefully, do your duties as a mother and a wife and a congregation member, a community member. Do your duties nicely, thinking that you're doing them for Krishna's pleasure. That bhakti principle will carry you beyond the bodily conception. That's it. Okay. Okay.
From Sanchari from Houston. Is a person coming into Krishna consciousness a result of their past karmic deeds or just mercy?
It's not at all connected with past pious deeds. It's connected with mercy and effort. So let's say there's two persons. They're both exposed to the same amount of mercy. One says yes, and the other says no. There's some free will involved in receiving mercy, yes or no. So it's a combination of getting mercy and saying yes to the mercy.
Follow-up question by Sanchari. She says, is there a karmic connection as to why some devotees are born into the movement and others don't have the opportunity until much later in their life?
Yeah, that's not karmic. That's the fruit of past devotional activity. The devotional activity is not karma. It's not punya either. It's bhakti. So you were born in a devotee family, and that's a clear indication, according to scripture, that in previous lives you were engaged in bhakti. Now, I was not born in a devotee family, but as soon as I came in contact with the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it was like iron filings in a magnet. I was very attracted. So that is, I take it as, according to scripture, past devotional service left incomplete, but not the same as yours. Your being born in a devotee family is even, a greater head start than what I had. But it's bhakti related, incomplete bhakti related, not karma related. Okay. Well, anything? No? No? Okay.
This is from Harsha Prabhu. If we are held back by modes of nature,
Held back?
held back by modes of nature, when we want to respond to karmic reaction, do we or can we have to work harder to break the cycle?
Well, it's not, we're held back by the modes of nature. We're under the control of the modes of nature, but that we're under the control of the modes of nature doesn't mean free will has to be more vigorously asserted if you're under the modes of nature, because we're all under the modes of nature, whatever the mode of nature is. Some persons are in this and that and the other and combination, and everyone's under the modes of nature without exception. Every living entity that takes birth, not just humans, we're under the modes of nature. So it's not because we're under the modes of nature we have to try harder or exert ourselves more. We have to recognize what our situation is. We do have to exert ourselves. Effort, prayasa, is required. But mercy is also required. It's not just make effort, make effort, make effort, without consciously reaching for mercy. Both are needed, effort and mercy. Notice that's a theme. That's a theme. Just like those of us that are here. We're here, we made some effort. And the person's online. You're making some effort. Instead of doing something else, you're doing this. It's some effort. You're foregoing something and you're doing this. Some effort. But there's also mercy. And, there's a conduit for that mercy, and that's devotees that are eager to extend Krishna's mercy to others. They're just instruments of Krishna's mercy. So we like being with devotees because they're instruments of Krishna's mercy. We're eager for Krishna's mercy. We get that through that channel. So we like. You have something?
Tharangani Mataji. She says, people often ask how to understand the intensity of suffering we see in this world, in one's own lives and lives of others, if suffering is meant to teach us something. One sometimes feels so engulfed and swallowed by the horrendous difficulties that one is not even able to reflect and learn. How might we address this question without oversimplifying things and just saying that it's karma or forgetfulness of our true nature, which may even sound harsh?
Yeah, it does sound harsh, especially when people go through great tragedy or something. And if we just shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's your karma, Prabhu, or sir or madam, that sounds very harsh. It doesn't mean, the philosophy is, the philosophical explanation is erroneous. It just may sound very harsh. So a lot depends on you and the circumstance and the other person. How you respond, other than saying, just your karma, Prabhu. Those who are, I think it's Billy Graham's TV evangelist Christian fellow, celebrity person, when 9/11 happened and all those terrible, terrible things happened, their response when asked, how do these things happen? They didn't say karma, but they said karma. They just said, when we behave as a society, these ways, those ways, and the other ways, then we have to expect Mother Nature is going to kick back. So, it depends on the person, depends on you, and depends on the circumstance. But look around and see the very nature of how people are interacting with one another, how they're interacting with the environment, how they're interacting in social circumstance, and the extremism that people are taking, and all of that energy has to go somewhere, and the energy that goes out is going to come back. Or people, like, say, school shootings, that was going on quite extensively for some time, and then lots of young people were on the receiving end. So it got to the point where in schools we had this situation in one of our North American leadership meetings. It was in Houston. We had this gentleman coming in from the police department teaching us what to do when he was using the term over and over again, a shooter. Like, what brings people to the position of being shooters, using his term? And they're angry. So what's the cause of that anger? They're acting out their anger. What triggered that anger? And they were, who knows what, but severely mistreated and abused and so forth and so on. And there's a lot of anger stored up inside, and anger's coming out. Now they have instruments to vent that anger. So what's to be done about the anger that's triggering people that do harsh things, or that bring about calamity or terrorism? And it's what's the root behind that mode of nature? What brings people to such a dark place of the mode of nature? And what can we do individually, collectively, to help mitigate that hurt that people are feeling that's causing those harsh behaviors or cruel behaviors? Or nature reacting violently and so forth. Take a look at how lifestyle can change and be more oriented towards a more compassionate, a higher mode of nature life, and ultimately a God-conscious life. Now, whether that's going to pacify the person and they'll feel, yes, now I have a direction, I can move in and feel happy, or not, that's not what Prema Trangini's question is. That, look at the big picture, and there's something wrong with the big picture. And what can we do about that big picture to make it better, so there's less of calamity or mass suffering or something? You have something more? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.